This Saturday, February 8th, is UFC 312. This will be my full card breakdown and prediction. Timestamps will be in the description. Without further ado, let's get right into it. In the first fight, we have HyunSung Park versus Nyamjargal Tumenddemberel. I apologize for the name. Park is 29 years old, 9-0, coming off a KO win 1 year ago. Park lands 4.15 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 3.43. He has an 89% finish rate and is a minus 280 favorite. Nyamjargal is 26 years old, 8-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision loss 2 months ago. Nyamjargal lands 4.43 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 3.29. He has a 78% finish rate and is a plus 225 underdog. Park has looked like a prospect to keep an eye on at flyweight. He's well-rounded, has 4 KOs and 4 submission wins on his resume. Nyamjargal is a young prospect, still looking for his first win in the UFC. He'll enjoy a 5-inch reach advantage. He also lands 4.68 takedowns per 15 minutes. This should be a fun first fight on the card, but I'm going to go with Park here. In the next fight, we have Anshul Jubli versus Quillan Salkilld. Jubli's 30 years old, 7-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a KO loss 1 year ago. Jubli lands 6.48 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.61. He has a 38% finish rate and is a plus 320 underdog. Quillan is 25 years old, 7-1, 5-0 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 4 months ago. Quillan lands 5.4 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 4.27. He has a 63% finish rate and is a minus 410 favorite. This should also be a fun fight as both guys are very high output. Quillan will be making his UFC debut after getting a win on Dana White's Contender Series. He's a very well-rounded fighter, and he'll also enjoy a 6-inch reach advantage. Jubli is the fighter from India, will be looking to bounce back after his tough loss in his last fight. He was winning up until the point where he got caught in the fight. For me here, I'm going to go with Quillan. I think he's going to be the more aggressive fighter. I didn't like how Jubli looked in his last fight, how he had to deal with adversity, and it just didn't sit well with me. In the next fight, we have Jonathan Micallef versus Kevin Jousset. Micallef is 25 years old, 7-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a submission win 3 months ago. Micallef lands less than 1 significant strike per minute, absorbs 1.66, has a 63% finish rate, and is a plus 200 underdog. Jousset is 31 years old, 10-3, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a TKO loss 4 months ago. Jousset lands 7.73 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 1.2, has a 46% finish rate, and is a minus 240 favorite. Jonathan Micallef will be making his UFC debut like a lot of people on this card after getting a win on Dana White's Contender Series. He can be low output on the feet, definitely wants to use his grappling as he lands 4.97 takedowns per 15 minutes. Jousset is looking to redeem himself after a tough loss to Brian Battle. Jousset is a striker with high output. He's going to have to show his takedown defense in this fight if he wants to be successful. I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset. I think he's going to be able to keep this fight on the feet enough. And I think he's going to be refocused after taking such a tough loss at home. In the next fight, we have Rongzhu versus Cody Steele. Rongzhu is 24 years old, 25-6, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a TKO loss 4 months ago. Rongzhu lands 5.45 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.80. He has a 68% finish rate and is a plus 195 underdog. Cody Steele is 29 years old, 7-0, coming off a TKO win 3 months ago. Steele lands 5.27 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.27 strikes as well. He has a 71% finish rate and is a minus 240 favorite. Rongzhu's in his second stint in the UFC and has much more experience, even though he's younger by 5 years. Rongzhu definitely comes a fight and is looking for his first win since being back in the UFC. Cody Steele, on the other side, will be making his UFC debut after winning on Dana White's Contender Series. I'm curious to see how he handles being on a pay-per-view. Will the lights be too bright for him? I don't think so. I mean, I really liked how he looked on Dana White's Contender Series. Looked like he was very calm, stayed within himself very well. So I'm going to go with Cody Steele, and I think he'll get it done in his UFC debut. In the next fight, we have Aleksandre Topuria versus Colby Thicknesse. I'm not going to call another man Thickness. Topuria is 29 years old, 5-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a TKO win over a year and a half ago. Topuria will be a -410 favorite. Colby's 25 years old, 7-0, coming off a TKO win 2 months ago. And he'll be coming into this fight as a +320 underdog. Both guys will be making their UFC debuts. Topuria is the older brother of Ilia Topuria, and he has a 100% finish rate. Thicknesse on the other side is a young, undefeated fighter, and he also has a few finishes. We don't really have a lot to go on other than Aleksandre's Ilia's brother, and they've been training together their entire life. Outside of that, I'm going to go with Topuria just based on a 100% finish rate, and I know who he's been training with. In the next fight, we have Cong versus Bruna, Brasil. Cong is 32 years old, 6-1, 4-1 in their last 5 fights, coming off a submission loss 2 months ago. Wang lands 7.07 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 1.63. She has a 57% finish rate and is a -440 favorite. Bruna, Brasil is 31 years old, 10-4-1, 3-2 in her last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 6 months ago. Brasil lands 2.94 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 3.49. She has a 45% finish rate and is a +340 underdog. Cong is going to be trying to rebound after her loss 2 months ago. She's a former kickboxing champion. She's a very dynamic striker with power in her hands. She was winning her last fight and then just got caught and got submitted. I'm curious to see how she comes into this fight and how she's going to look and where she's going to be at mentally. Bruna Brasil's a striker, but can be a little low output at times. I think Cong gets back to her winning ways here, and I'm going to go with Cong. In the next fight, we have Nolan versus Viacheslav Borshchev. Nolan is 24 years old, 8-1, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 5 months ago. Nolan lands 6.68 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.17. He has a 56% finish rate and is a +115 underdog. Borshchev is 33 years old, 8-4-1, 2-2-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 5 months ago. Borshchev lands 5.4 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 4.8. He has a 46% finish rate and is a -135 favorite. Nolan is a massive lightweight striker at 6'3". He'll enjoy a 4-inch reach advantage. He has high output, but he does get hit a lot as well. Borshchev is also a striker that's gotten into trouble in the UFC with his grappling. Borshchev is high output also, but has a slightly better striking defense. I'm expecting this to be a very fun fight. I'm looking forward to seeing Nolan's fight IQ in this fight. I see this being back and forth, and I think both guys will have success on the feet. This is another tough pick and a coin flip fight for me, honestly, but I'm going to take the underdog. I'm going to go with Nolan. In the next fight, we have Jenkins versus Gabriel Santos. Jenkins is 31 years old, 13-3, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a TKO win 5 months ago. Jenkins lands 4.83 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 2.92. He has a 56% finish rate and is a +190 underdog. Santos is 28 years old, 11-2, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 4 months ago. Santos lands 4.69 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 4.77. He has a 54% finish rate and is a -230 favorite. Jenkins is a well-rounded fighter with solid striking, good ground and pound, and also is a submission threat. He has some of the best low kicks in the featherweight division. Gabriel Santos, on the other side, is a well-rounded fighter as well, has solid striking and grappling. This is excellent matchmaking and should be a very competitive fight. I can see this also being back and forth and where either guy can take it. This is another tough pick for me, but I'm going to go with the underdog again and take Jenkins in an absolute dogfight. Santos getting his hand raised here wouldn't surprise me at all, and this one should be a lot of fun. In the next fight, we have Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado. Matthews is 30 years old, 20-7, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 8 months ago. Matthews lands 3.3 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 2.54. He has a 48% finish rate and is a -220 favorite. Prado is 22 years old, 12-2, 3-2 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision loss 11 months ago. Prado lands 4.58 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.66. He has an 86% finish rate and is a +180 underdog. Jake Matthews hasn't been too consistent lately, as he's won 1, lost 1 in his last 6 fights. He's a striker that attacks all 3 levels and uses combinations. He'll also enjoy a 4-inch reach advantage. Matthews does have a submission threat also. Francisco Prado is a young, aggressive fighter that walks forward. He's 1-2 since joining the UFC. He does absorb more strikes than he lands, and that's not a recipe for success long-term. So for me, I'm going to go with Jake Matthews here. I like how well-rounded he is. He doesn't rush anything, and I think his composure and his footwork and his movement will frustrate Prado. In the next fight, we have Jimmy Crute versus Rodolfo Bellato. Jimmy Crute's 28 years old, 12-4-1, 1-3-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a submission loss 18 months ago. Crute lands 3.68 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 3.04. He has a 53% finish rate and is a +120 underdog. Bellato is 28 years old, 12-2, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a TKO win 14 months ago. Bellato lands 6.47 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.9. He has a 79% finish rate and is a -140 favorite. Jimmy Crute is getting back into the octagon after taking some time off after a rough 4-fight stretch. He got finished in 3 of those 4 fights and was about to lose the other until a foul happened and the fight resulted in a draw. He doesn't move his head much and is just there to be hit time and time again. Bellato's on a 4-fight win streak and fights with an attitude. He walks forward and brings the fight to his opponents. He faced a lot of adversity in his last fight against Ihor Potieria and was nearly finished and then ended up finishing Ihor Potieria. I think this fight will be brutal, just rock 'em, sock 'em robots. Both guys are going to stand right in front of each other, swinging and banging. I'm going to go with Bellato here. I'm not really sure where Jimmy Crute is mentally after his most recent string of fights. In the next fight, we have Justin Tafa versus Thaleson Teixeira. Tafa's 31 years old, 7-4, 3-1-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision loss 10 months ago. Tafa lands 4.09 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 5.02. He has a 64% finish rate and is a +130 underdog. Teixeira is 25 years old, 7-0, coming off a KO win 4 months ago. Teixeira has a 100% finish rate and he's a -155 favorite. Tafa's a big southpaw slugger with big power in his hands. He does get hit more than he lands, which, as I've said, isn't a good recipe for success, especially in the heavyweight division. He'll be at a severe 7-inch height disadvantage and a 9-inch reach disadvantage. Teixeira will be making his UFC debut after getting a KO win on Dana White's Contender Series. He's a tall, long striker with big power, evident in the 100% finish rate. I think both guys are going to be very careful and respect each other's power. I can see this playing out very slowly, and whoever lands first hurts the other guy and gets the finish. So for me, I'm going to go with Teixeira here. I just think the 9-inch reach advantage will just be too much for Tafa, as he isn't the most fleet of foot and doesn't move a lot. And I think Teixeira is just going to keep him at range and just use that massive reach advantage. In the co-main event, we have Weili Zhang versus Tatiana Suarez for the strawweight title. Weili Zhang's 35 years old, 25-3, 4-1 in the last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 9 months ago. Weili Zhang lands 5.66 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 3.15. She has a 68% finish rate and is a +105 underdog. Suarez is 34 years old, 11-0, coming off a submission win a year and a half ago. Suarez lands 4.27 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 1.38. She has a 73% finish rate and is a -125 favorite. Weili Zhang is probably the 2nd greatest women's strawweight ever. This would be a test unlike anything she's ever faced in the UFC. Weili does get taken down at times with her 50% takedown defense. I think she'll be by far the better striker in this matchup. She attacks all 3 levels with low kicks, body shots, and has legit power in her hands. Tatiana Suarez has finally made it to her title. I mean, I know there's a couple days between now and when the fight takes place. Hopefully she makes it. She's the best wrestler by far in the division. She fights to her strengths and doesn't waste any time getting takedowns. She averages 6.2 takedowns per 15 minutes. In my opinion, this one thing will determine the fight. Weili does get taken down a decent amount, and she also can get control when she's on the ground. However, she does offer a submission threat. I think the padlock stat for this fight will be 4 takedowns for Suarez. In my opinion, if Suarez gets over 4 takedowns, she wins the fight. I really think Weili is up against it in the matchup just stylistically, and this will be her toughest stylistic matchup outside of Rose Namajunas. This is a tough pick, as I think everything's going against Weili Zhang, and I think this matchup definitely favors Tatiana Suarez with the wrestling. But I just believe in Weili Zhang. I think she's the more well-rounded fighter, and she has skills everywhere. And I think her takedown defense is going to be enough to keep the fight on the feet long enough for her to do damage on the feet. And I think all the wrestling she's been doing in the last couple of years has definitely helped her game tremendously. So I'm going to go with Weili Zhang. I think she's going to be prepared for the grappling onslaught Suarez will try to implement. And the improvements that Weili's made in the last 2 years will definitely show itself. Weili will have to defend takedowns like her life depends on it. If not, Tatiana Suarez is just going to wet blanket her to a win. Before we get into the main event, like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. In the main event, we have Dricus Du Plessis versus Strickland 2. Du Plessis is 31 years old, 22-2, 5-0 in his last 5 fights, coming off a submission win 5 months ago. DDP lands 6.18 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 4.85. He has an 83% finish rate and is a -210 favorite. Strickland is 33 years old, 29-6, 4-1 in his last 5 fights, coming off a decision win 8 months ago. Strickland lands 6.01 significant strikes per minute, absorbs 4.48. He has a 43% finish rate and is a +170 underdog. DDP just has that awkward, unorthodox style. He does have a grappling element in his game with submission ability, which we saw in the Israel Adesanya fight. He's a finisher. In his 8 UFC fights, he has 6 finishes. He's shown some real grit and will in his fights. He found success late in the first fight against Strickland with coming forward and forcing Strickland to fight off the back foot. Will that carry over in the rematch? That's going to be the question. Strickland, as we know, just jab, teep, and just spams jabs and teeps over and over again. Has that Philly shell, shoulder roll defense, and he has to fight on the front foot. In my opinion, this would be the key to the fight, as I don't think he'll have any success fighting off the back foot. Has solid cardio, but I think his Achilles heel is that he doesn't have much power and offers no submission or grappling threat. In his last 5 years in the UFC, he's finished 2 fights. For me, I'm going to go with DDP. I think he figured out how to deal with Strickland towards the end of the first fight. I don't see Strickland bringing any new wrinkles into the second fight. Strickland's game, in my opinion, requires his opponents to back up, and he has to bully his opponents to get them to back up. DDP even mentioned it in an interview that Strickland needs to bully his opponents, and I think DDP is definitely going to use this to his advantage and not allow Strickland to back him up. If you made it this far in the video, I greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Questions, comments, feedback, always welcome. And as always, until next time.